And it's interesting because the coronavirus, like the influenza epidemic, I mean, we don't see it, you know. I mean, you see an image of it, like there was the kind of viral image that you see with the spikes coming out. Um, but I mean, how is it depicted generally? I mean, when people say coronavirus, we would probably have that image of that little thing with all the sticks coming out, much like there's the image of the influenza virus that they
Mhm.
covered in the 30s. So, I mean, but what kind of imagery do we tend to think of or we see around it?
Yeah, that's a great observation because one of the complex things about showing pictures of coronavirus is that absent medical technology, we can't see it. And it makes it hard to show the experience of coronavirus and what a pandemic is in a picture or in a video. So we show things that are about it rather than the illness itself. And so one of the things that we saw was the government every day told people how many people had died and how many people were sick. And we saw lots and lots and lots of charts and graphs. We talked a lot about, I'm sure you may remember, bending the curve. Can we get the rate of infection to go down? And that's all really important information. But what we often didn't see, especially towards the beginning of our first lockdown, was a lot of pictures or stories about specific people. We didn't get a lot of the information about the experience of the pandemic. We got a lot of charts counting what was happening, which is really important for the government to make decisions, but it's not giving us a full picture. It's not giving us a full narrative of what's going on in the pandemic. Part of the reason too, what we didn't see, which I think some of us might think, if we were going to try and show a pandemic in a picture, what would we show? And we might think, well, maybe like sick people, for instance. But in Britain, we didn't see a lot of images or videos of sick people or people who had died, partly because we're showing respect for the people who are ill and for the privacy of their families, right? Because this is a scary and upsetting thing to have happen in your family or your community is to be sick. And also, it's difficult to look at images and videos of people who are ill or people who may have died at a time when everyone is very stressed, things are changing very quickly. Those images can be scary. And so, what we did see instead was we saw photos of people talking to their families on Zoom. We saw photos of the ways in which health workers were assisting people in the hospital to speak to their loved ones on the phone, over iPad, because they weren't allowed to have visitors, right? Again, for safety. And we also saw in the newspaper and on the news some photos and stories about people who had died as a result of COVID-19, or people who were health workers who were working to assist people when they became sick.